It's great to be here at the NCVER No Frills conference for another year, albeit in circumstances very different from the past. I hope you find my presentation on redefining competency, challenges and opportunities an interesting look at how the vet sector can better deliver to the aspirations of all Australians, government, learners, industry and importantly people working in RTOs and other training organisations. If the vet sector doesn't work for the people employed in it, it has little chance to deliver quality to meet the expectations of the broader community. Today's presentation has been based on our daily work over the past 5 years with industry associations, subject matter experts and industry reference committees. We attend every significant industry conference held via our stakeholders throughout the year. We believe we have our finger on the pulse of industry. Our formal work with industry reference committees and our informal activities with industry contributes to the information gathered each year and published in 8 industry skills forecasts. As we carry out these activities, we come across a wide range of issues which we use as the points of inquiry for our research. Research involving many hundreds of RTOs and vet sector stakeholders. These skills forecasts and the training package projects that flow from them provide us with valuable insights into industry skills challenges and opportunities. This presentation is based on that research and our unique insights into industry, skills and training. With calls for industry to have more ownership and more buy-in to support the vet sector, what can be done to lift their support and involvement? Is it really needed? We approach the vet sector as a sector quite different from schools and universities. The vet sector exists to provide Australians with training and recognition of skills to secure employment, expand or improve current work capacity, or to learn new careers. It is intrinsically linked to jobs and productivity. Without access to a properly functioning and funded vet sector, Australians and Australian industry will struggle to be globally competitive. We are concerned that industry leadership is required at all stages of the vet sector, but is currently concentrated mainly at describing training package outcomes via training packages. Skills Impact works with industry through industry reference committees, and these reference committees play a key role in identifying the skill requirements of their sectors. They are involved in the development of units of competency, which are better described as vocational skill standards, and the packaging of these competencies into qualifications. So, while industry has a say in the content, they have very limited influence over what the standards look like. But more importantly, industry has very limited influence on the next stage of the vet sector pipeline. That is, what, how and when training is delivered and how it is funded. It is our contention that a truly industry-led system, and that is what this system is often claimed to be, would have industry involved in all stages of the system and not only at the beginning of the skills pipeline. Much of the vet sector marketplace, in our view, is dysfunctional, and this is recognised by many reports across the sector. We support significant reform to improve its function, with a good starting place being the involvement of industry in a more structured way across each part of the skills pipeline. A reformed system would ensure that enterprises have a role to play in the development of competency for learners and in supporting competency and proficiency decisions. The vet system currently places the burden of developing competency and recognising competency 100% in the hands of RTOs. We contend that this is not reasonable, efficient, effective or practical and needs to change. An improved system would support RTOs to do what they do best, and it would support enterprises and, where appropriate, industry to contribute to the development and, where possible, even to the assessment of competency. So, in summary, with regards to industry leadership, we are suggesting to get better industry leadership and industry engagement in the sector, we need to do 2 things. The first is calling the things that industry are currently involved in already industry work skill standards instead of competency standards. This clearly would demonstrate to industry that they have a direct connection to the vet sector. We know that industry are far more interested in work standards than in something called training packages. The second is to ensure that enterprises and industry have an active and recognised role in the vet sector. more on how this can be done later in the presentation, but it would result in direct enterprise contributions towards the training and skills, mainly via supervised work practice, which is so important to the development of true competency. Perhaps a real-life example would help. Skills Impact looks after baking qualifications. So a lot of young people enrol in a TAFE college to start their career in the baking profession. Now, TAFE can teach them, or any other RTO that has this qualification on scope, can teach them a whole range of activities they need to learn to be a good baker. They can teach them all the various attributes of a baking, mixing ingredients, baking, oven work, cleaning, preparation. There's a whole range of things they can learn. However, that will never be the same as working in a bakery where the activities start at, say, 3 o'clock in the morning, and there are real customers turning up from 7 a.m. in the morning, and you've got a real employer. So what we're proposing in this solution is that RTOs are allowed to focus on what they think, what they're good at, and that is teaching people all of the things that can be taught in an institution, but not be responsible for saying, all right, this person's truly competent, because to develop true competency, the person does need to go into a bakery and learn it with real live ingredients, with real customers and a real employer. So we're suggesting the vet sector should have sort of 2 phases, if you like, an RTO-led phase, which an RTO signs off that someone is competent from an RTO's perspective, and then a second phase where people develop competency in the workplace. And that's an example of allowing RTOs doing what they're good at, institutionalised learning around baking, and letting enterprises do what they do well at, and that is supervise employees to deliver real life outcomes in a real workplace. Competency is a journey, not a training destination. Our research shows that many vet sector stakeholders prefer a staged approach to competency development, and we agree. Industry enterprises and training providers, including some that are RTOs, play key parts in developing competency. However, this is not recognised under the current configuration of the vet system. The current competent or not yet competent structure was determined over 30 years ago and has not evolved into a system to match the sophistication of rapidly changing industry, or in fact the sophistication of the current vet sector. It's time for a step forward and to recognise that competency is developed over time and in different places. Our research, and the research of others, show that true competency or proficiency is built over time, very often in the workplace, in employment, and with supervised and ongoing practice. Skills are also perishable. The best preservative is practice. The more complex a skill, the quicker it can perish. The longer it is practiced in real life situations, the longer it will last, even without ongoing use. The current system has a definition of competency as per this slide, and it's used by ASQA. The definition is that it is the consistent application of knowledge and skills to the standard of performance required in the workplace. Now, this clearly requires workplace-based practice, but most vet courses are delivered without the capacity to deliver supervised workplace practices. It should also be recognised that proficiency itself is only a step on the journey towards expertise, specialisation, career progression, entrepreneurship, and career change. So we think it's important to accurately recognise the roles of vet in this journey, rather than vet being seen as all things in this journey, if the system is to operate effectively. The end result is that competency now has a new meaning, which has moved a long way from the definition cited above as used by ASQA. Most participants exit the vet sector with basic skills and up-to-date knowledge, but they're not competent or proficient in job roles to workplace standards. A qualified learner from the vet sector is knowledgeable and safe to start practicing in a workplace. The skills and knowledge they've gained support them to safely continue the journey of developing proficiency over time, providing they receive coaching and supervision in a workplace with good standards of work. In our study of workplaces and training institutions, we contend that the currently used definition of competency is an unrealistic expectation and is only rarely able to be delivered in RTOs and in institutionalised training. Most competency assessments should be based on evidence of work performance as carried out in a workplace. Unfortunately, the current system places 100% of responsibility on RTOs to deliver complete competency and their outcomes and assessments, and RTOs are often poorly positioned to do this. The vet sector has shifted over time. NCVER data shows that less than 10% of enrolments now occur in apprenticeships and traineeships. It's now shifted to a system largely based on institutionalised learning, with approaches that cannot deliver to the current definition of competency in a consistent fashion. The situation now has resulted in the understanding of competency moving significantly over time to now being what a person can be expected to do as a result of institutionalised learning and not as a result of learning plus supervised practice in a workplace, i.e. what the definition and what we're calling is true competency. Our survey of vet sector stakeholders show that there is a lot of support to reconfigure the system to identify the parts of skills proficiency RTOs are able to deliver and the parts enterprises need to deliver. The outcomes that need to be delivered by RTOs would need to be identified under a revised definition of competency and then supplemented by identified outcomes, which are mainly supervised work practice delivered in enterprises.
To substantiate the wealth of anecdotal evidence that we've collected over the years, Skills Impact has engaged Griffith University to collect data and views on the vet sector's current competency paradigm and to work with us to offer solutions towards vet reform. The Dreyfus model of skills acquisition, which suggests that expertise develops through stages and isn't something that someone either has or doesn't have, was a key tool for developing our conceptual framework. An online survey was distributed to employers, industry representatives and training providers in industries as diverse as agriculture, animal care and paper manufacturing. The questions centred on the concept of competency and common understandings of it to evaluate the potential efficacy of reimagining competency through a developmental framework. It also sought to find out the extent to which stakeholders consider that workplaces should be involved in training that prepares learners for careers in their industries. The survey is still open, so we would absolutely value your input, and we'll display the survey link at the end of this presentation. So far, around 500 people have responded and have provided extraordinary data that we'll go on to analyse in full. But I'd just like to share with you some interim descriptive statistics from the attitudinal questions. 71% of respondents either agree or strongly agree that ideally workplaces should have an expanded and direct role in training. There was also strong support for a developmental approach to competency, with over 76% of respondents agreeing or strongly agreeing that our vet system should recognise different stages of learner performance. How exactly that could work in a reformed vet sector is a big issue, and while many participants suggested practical issues that would need to be overcome, there was a general agreement that vet, and so the industries that help train and employ those graduates, may benefit from a staged approach to learning that more faithfully reflects the journey from novice to competency, to proficiency, and even mastery.
Competency, or proficiency, that is assessed in real work settings through a collective delivery outcome between RTOs and enterprises, would better meet enterprise and employer expectations. This is what occurs through the highly regarded traditional apprenticeship model, which now unfortunately makes up less than 10% of student enrolments in the vet sector. We're of the view that RTOs should be supported to deliver learning and basic skill outcomes that contribute to work outcomes described in units of competency, rather than attempt to deliver final or endpoint proficiency. Enterprises, on the other hand, should be supported to work with learners to develop their workplace proficiency and provide evidence of successful work practice. Units of competency could be redesigned to identify the areas RTOs can deliver and assess, and the parts enterprises can deliver and assess, to produce supporting materials for both the RTO-based training delivery and workplace practice and the evidence generated by that practice. But how could the existing system be changed to support this solution, I hear you ask? National skills and training materials could be created to help define what an RTO is responsible for delivering, while offering a range of options to meet local requirements. Units of competency and training packages, renamed Industry Work Skill Standards, could be supplemented with enterprise guidance on delivering relevant workplace practice and evidence of competency similar to the guidance provided in recognised ISO and ASO standards. To assess learners, RTOs would draw on the delivery standards outlined in the National Skills and Training Materials, which are based on units of competency, to determine whether a learner is safe to work. In turn, workplace assessors or supervisors would use simplified versions of competency standards called industry work skill standards with enterprise supporting documents to provide practice and evidence guidance and to support the assessment of whether someone is proficient. Under this model, RTOs deliver in collaboration with enterprises a minimum acceptable standard of vocational training. Industry would be aware of the difference between industry work skill standards and the RTO delivery standards, as outlined in National Skills and Training Materials, and recognise that the final components of proficiency need to be gained by people learning in workplace situations with supervised work practice. In this way, we can address the fundamental policy issue of the specific responsibility of RTOs and of those for industry. Until we do this, we'll continue to experience significant quality issues combined with a lack of industry engagement in skill development to consistent high-quality national standards.